Welcome to Psych 230, Social Psychology. So today we're continuing with Chapter 4. We were talking about self-presentation. Actually, we're talking about the self, okay, and basically self-presentation and why we present. What are the goals? Okay, we talked about one of the goals as one of the goals being to appear likable. Okay. And we talked about the associated strategy. So today we're going to talk about the second goal of self-presentation, which is to appear competent. You want people to think that you are competent, right? That you're smart, you're capable, you know what you're doing, that sort of stuff. And we're going to talk about these strategies that help you appear competent. We're going to talk about staging performances, claiming competence, using trappings of competence, and making excuses or claiming obstacles. We're going to talk about all those things. All those are strategies to make yourself appear more competent, right? You want people to think well of you. You want people to think that you're competent. This is how you do it. So let's get into this. Okay, so one way to appear competent is to stage a performance. And that is just what it sounds, basically. That means that you get a chance to show off. It doesn't have to be on a literal stage, but you put yourself out there, so to speak, and you get to show off in front of people. Look at what I can do, that sort of stuff, right? Staging performances is basically when you demonstrate your competence in public. Whether, let's say, you sign up for a chess tournament or a basketball tournament, or you volunteer for something, because you're good at it and you want to help solve some problems. You are staging a performance. You are basically putting yourself out there in public and showing people, look, I am good at this. I can do this. Or maybe you invite somebody to a show because you're let's say, an actor, or you're taking part in a play, or maybe you're a musician and you, even if you're just a street musician, you invite people to go out there and say, I'm going to be at Long Beach this weekend. Come and see me. I'm going to be playing some tunes with my band, right? You're basically inviting people. You're putting yourself on stage and saying, look, I can play music. I'm awesome, right? I'm good at this stuff. That's staging a performance. Never mind what it says there about listing the 3 instances in which you have attempted to appear competent by staging a performance. That would be for discussion in class, right? But we're doing this remotely and I'm recording this, so we can't have discussion until this is over, okay? But I have staged a performance in the past, so to speak. There was this one time at the college over here where I had a chance to kind of show off a little bit. Only one time, all the years I've been here, only happened one time. And it was set up through the student clubs where they set up a tournament, a basketball game. Basically, a basketball game, faculty and staff against students. A basketball tournament, a basketball game, basically. So I said, well, I like basketball. I'm going to sign up. Okay, so we put together some teams and we had this game, and it wasn't really staff, faculty against students, basically. And faculty won, okay? We won like 63-30. We basically just annihilated the other team, the team made up of students. Why was that, right? Well, because those that like basketball got to participate. And for faculty, that's those of us who basically, the ones who volunteer to be part of this, right, are those of us who actually know how to play. Some of us used to be part of teams when we were younger. I played high school basketball, so I got to show off. And if I recall, I think I scored like 18, 19 points, something like that. I did okay, right? I was mainly scoring inside. I had a little bit of trouble with the outside shots, so I kind of stopped that, right? But I was driving in, and laying it up and all kinds of stuff. And I got to show off a little bit, okay, that I can play, right? And the thing is, it was a little bit unfair against the students, because for the students, those that signed up, they weren't necessarily the student athletes. They weren't the people who play for the team at the college. These were the people who were club members, is who they were. And, well, who are club members? They're not necessarily a student athlete. So we didn't have the toughest competition as far as students. And faculty won easily. And I got a chance to show off there. I got a chance to stage a performance by volunteering. And I'm hoping that at some point we're going to have another one. and I'm gonna be even more prepared this time. Okay, and do even better, right? Get a chance to show off, show you guys that I can play. Even though I'm older now, I still consider myself an athlete. I can run, I can jump, I can play, I can hit that jump shot, I can drive in, right? I can do that. Okay, get a chance to stage performance. And you know, I used to play a lot as a kid. Like I said, I was in the team, basketball team, and that is staging a performance. But let me move on from that because I can go on and on with these stories. And I was thinking about telling you guys about when I was a kid and when I used to play with my cousins and all that stuff and the competition that we had. Tell you guys about that, but that would just be bragging, okay? And that interferes with projecting modesty, and that doesn't look good. Bragging is not a good thing for most people. All right, so, but yes, when you stage a performance, it's like you put yourself out there and you get to show off a little bit or a lot, depending on what's happening, okay? Another way to appear competent, right? To show people that you really know how to do something, that you're really good at something, is by claiming competence. And that's kind of what I was trying to do there, claiming, hey, I'm good at basketball. I'm not really showing off for you guys because there's no performance right now. There's no competition, right? That has been set up. But I was talking about that. And so basically I was claiming it. Hey, I'm good at this, right? I can play that kind of stuff, right? I used to play for the high school team, right? If not good enough for college, of course, because I'm not tall enough, I wouldn't even try out, okay? But you can claim competence. Just tell people, hey, I'm good at this, I can play. Or yeah, I'm good at writing, or I'm good at poetry. That's claiming competence, okay? As far as basketball, let me tell you a little bit more, right? Now that we're talking about claiming competence. You know, when I did go to college, actually, even when I was a graduate student at USC, I played against some people over there who were really, really good at USC. Some people who were amazing. And those people, by the way, were not even good enough to make the team, even though they were really good. You have to be amazing to make even the college team. By the way, it also helps to be really tall. If you're really tall and good, you can probably make it. But if you're regular height, like most people, like me, 5'7", 5'9", 5'10", 5'11", or even 6 feet tall, you have almost no chance. But I played with some people who were amazing at how well they can play, still not good enough for the team. Okay, I played with people who would almost never miss when they shot. People who were like Michael Jordan, as good as they could play, right? They went in there and they could do everything. Now, keep in mind that they were doing it with lesser competition, right? They're not as good as Michael Jordan, right? But those people were not good enough for the team either. Why? They just weren't tall enough. You have to be tall and you have to be able to play well and also defend. And when you have that defense, that really good defense, well, that's another matter, right? How well you're going to do then. But playing with those people, street ball, whatever you call it, pickup game, I could do that, okay? But that's claiming competence, right? Me telling you I'm good at something, or you saying, yeah, I'm good at poetry, or I can play guitar, or whatever it is, that's claiming competence. Or when you tell people you're smart, you're good at math, whatever it is. But when you are claiming competence, that is a little bit of a two-edged sword, so to speak, right? Claims of competence can be a bit risky, okay? Because when you claim competence, it also seems like you're bragging as well, and that makes you less likable when you brag, for most people, okay? Claims of competence are appropriate when they are invited, when people ask you, hey, can you do this, right? Or like, hey, we need somebody else to play. Would you like to play with us? And then you get a chance to show them how good you are, right? Or when they need somebody, will somebody please volunteer? We have this committee we've set up, we're going to try to solve this problem, right? And you volunteer because it caters to your skills, right? When they're invited, when you're asked at a job interview, if they ask you, yeah, are you good at this? Can you do this, right? We need someone who can do this. And you say, yeah, I can do that. It's not good for you to just brag and say, yeah, I can do it all. I can do this or that. Let them ask you, right? You put it on your resume, of course, or if you're applying for a faculty job, an education job, it's called a VITA. But if they ask you, yes, go ahead and tell them. And of course, you put it in writing in your resume or whatever it is. But you shouldn't just be bragging, okay? And also claims of competence are also appropriate when they are secondhand. When somebody says how good you are, that looks better. A friend talks up, right, how good you are, right? A friend says how good you are at math, or how good you are at writing, or how good you are at music, or whatever it is, or how good you are at basketball, you know? And speaking of secondhand, I can tell you about some of the people I play with. Like I said, I play with some really good people. People were really good. You would imagine there'd be some really good competition at USC, right? And even when I was growing up as a teenager, playing with with my cousins and one of my brothers, we also played. We had our own team, and we would play. And I can tell you, some of the guys on our team, actually, we all had our roles to play. We were all pretty good. And I had some we had some taller players who were really good, who can really rebound and play really well. One of my cousins was really good at just driving in and laying it up and just getting in there, even with all those bunch of people there. We had good rebounders. We had people who could shoot. We had everything. Okay. And when we played, we had some good competition, but because we had a good team, because we had some good players, we won more often than we lost. Okay. I know I'm bragging here a little bit, but let me just tell you guys, we played a lot. We used to go out there. We used to play for 3 or 4 hours. And the way it was is that we would play. And then if you won, you got to play again. You got to play the next team that was waiting. And then if you won, if you beat that team, you got to play the next one and the next one. You keep playing. And you can imagine how you'd get tired after a while, right? And let's just say it got to the point where they hated us because we were always winning. They hated us. We got into fights sometimes, fist fights, because they hated us so much because we'd always win. We had a really good team. And this is a team of Latinos, okay? We're not like we had the people who were 6'5" or anything like that. Our tallest players, a couple of them were like 6 feet, and the rest of us are like 5'7", 5'8", 5'9". That's about it, right? But we had a really good team. It's good if you can talk up the other players, the other people, and say how good they are. That sounds more appropriate than you saying, yeah, I'm it, right? It's because of me that we kept winning, right? No, that looks like you're bragging. Claims of competence are better if somebody asks you, or if you actually can get somebody else to say how good you are for you, okay? Then it looks more appropriate. Then it makes you look more competent. So I was getting at this, okay? I got ahead of myself. Yes, verbal claims of competence can be risky. You saying how awesome you are, right? That's risky. Why? Because it interferes with projecting modesty. When you tell people how good you are at something, you look like you're bragging. And most people don't like people who brag. They think you're full of yourself, you're conceited, you think you're Mr. Perfect or Miss Perfect, and they don't like you for that. So it's kind of a bit risky, right? You have to kind of show that you're competent or say that you are and do it, or in some way, right? Without seeming like you're bragging. And here's the thing. Many people believe that those who are truly competent don't need to claim it. Right? If you're really good at something, you don't need to tell people. They will see it. If you're really good at your job, you don't have to talk about how good you are. You will be noticed and you will be promoted. If you're really good at math, right? You don't have to talk about it. People will find out. Okay? If you're really good at writing or music, right? Hey, if I was really good at basketball, right? I wouldn't need to tell you guys about it, right? I'd be playing in the NBA, right? Or whatever. But of course, I'm too old now for the NBA, but those who are really good, who are really competent, they don't need to say anything. They let their game do the talking, so to speak. You don't need to say it. Those who are always saying how awesome they are, probably not as awesome as they think they are. Okay. So that's the thing about saying that, right? Claiming competence is risky. Sometimes it just makes you less likable. Another way you can appear competent is by using the trappings of confidence. You can basically use things that make you look like you're really good at stuff, okay? That you're a professional or something like that, right? And some of these things are going to be outdated, but I left them in there anyway, just to show you the way it used to be, and then we can talk about. And so I can bring up the fact that now that doesn't work anymore. So there's people who are good self-promoters, right? People who promote themselves really well and, and basically, make themselves look competent, right? They use props and habits of competence. Things like, waiting to return phone calls. So, yeah, I'm really busy, right? There's a lot of people who need my advice, or a lot of people who want my help, a lot of people who want to hire me, or a lot of people who want my business. So I can't get back to you right away, right? That makes you look more competent. You're busy, as opposed to you have no business and you can return calls right away. Now, this thing about carrying cell phones, pagers, that was in the past, right? That doesn't work anymore. There used to be a time, and I think this was maybe the early 2000s. And even before that, they had those big, bulky cell phones, right? where if you had one, it was because you were important. You were on call all the time. Maybe you were a doctor or someone important that they needed to reach you at any time, right? Or they needed to page you. You had this little device and it would just beep whenever, it would beep and it would show you a phone number and say, you need to call this person. You're someone important, like a doctor, a lawyer, or someone like that, that they need to contact, right? People used to carry these things and it made them seem important. The last one still works, wearing clothes associated with competence. You want to look competent, you want to look like you know what you're doing. If you're a male, right, wearing a suit, right, you're a professional. So you wear a suit, right, you're dressed formally. It basically is telling people, hey, I'm somebody important, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a professional, and this is how I dress. This is how you're going to see me all the time because I have that kind of job, okay? I'm an executive, something like that, right? I'm important. I'm someone who is very competent. I'm someone who's very skilled, and I have a high level in the organization, okay? There's other ways. It doesn't have to be a suit, right? If you're a woman, by the way, yeah, there's something similar to that. You know, it could be pants and a jacket and a blouse, or it could also be a skirt and a jacket and blouse. So you look, just look at the way the politicians dress, okay? You'll never see them any other way because they want to make sure that they always appear competent to you, even though a lot of them are just popular, don't know what the hell they're talking about. As you guys know, right? Some of the people have been elected, right? Just shouldn't even be there, okay? They're just popular, right? We usually want people who are competent. We want to elect people like that, but yeah, popularity helps. Okay, but we're talking about competence here. If you are a doctor, for instance, you don't have to be dressed in a suit and stuff like that. Hey, if you are in your doctor's outfit, there's different things. I think they call them scrubs. Okay, you know that outfit that they wear, that you know that you use when you're going to do surgery, or when you're at the office, right? And you got your stethoscope and that white lab coat, or you know the white lab coat is especially useful. Let's say if you're a scientist, a researcher, and you got that white lab coat, right? I am a scientist, so I wear this, right? That makes you look more competent. There's different types of uniforms for different jobs that show that you're a big shot. You've made it, right? I mean, there's a certain way dentists dress, doctors, scientists, nurses, all those things, right? You know, firefighters, policemen, right? They have their uniform. Guess what that does for them? Makes them appear more competent at whatever it is that their job is, okay? There's more to it. Another way to appear competent is to make excuses or claim obstacles. I have to explain this one a little bit more, but sometimes people make excuses. When things don't go well, you can make excuses and still continue to claim that you are good at something, that you're capable, because there's excuses, right? Or you claim that something happened and that's why it didn't get done. It's not really your fault, right? That's another way that you can appear competent without actually being competent. So one of these things is called discounting. Discounting is when you make excuses, you claim obstacles to excuse failure, right? Like if you get an F on something, you didn't get something done, you know, say, well, I had a hangover, or, you know, I couldn't get the paper done because, you know, I have a house to take care of. I have a bunch of kids. I have a job. I'm not just a student, you know, and it's not that I'm not smart. It's not that I can't do this. It's I have too much going on. Or I have all these problems. I'm due in court because I'm fighting, you know, for custody of my kids or something like that. That's discounting. You claim excuses, claim obstacles to excuse your failure. And that way people might still think that, yeah, you're still competent, even though you didn't produce the desired result, right? Augmenting is when you do something that makes you appear competent as well. This is when you use excuses in the opposite way. You use excuses and claim obstacles to increase the perceived competence when overcome. So this is when you say that even though I had these problems, even though I don't have a lot of time, that I've got kids, I got full-time job, right? I've got, and I also am a student and I got all these other things going on. I still am getting good grades. I still did a good paper, right? So not only am I good, I'm really good, right? Because I have all these other things to worry about. I got the report done despite the fact that I was given very little time. The boss wanted this report done right away. He just told me about it yesterday and he wanted it done the next day, and I got it done and I did a good job. And that's augmenting. You say, even though I have very little time, it was very hard to do a good job, I still did it. That's augmenting. You know, even though I got my arm in a cast, I will still beat you at basketball. That's augmenting. I did that once. I played my cousin. She was a girl, right? Female cousin. And yeah, there was a time that I had my arm in a cast. I broke my wrist. I broke my wrist, by the way, trying to dunk. That's how I broke my wrist. And you know, and so nothing stopped me from playing, right? Eventually, I didn't have a whole lot of pain, but I was in a cast. I would still play. I learned how to play with just one arm. Okay, and I told my cousin, look, I'm so good at this, I'm going to beat you with one arm, right? I'm going to beat you even though I can only use one hand, right? That's augmenting, saying even though I have this, I can still beat you. I can still do this, right? Again, I'm bragging, but that's a form of augmenting. Okay, actually, to tell you the truth, I didn't win. I lost. Okay, but I was trying to use the example. Okay, yeah, she beat me actually. I only had one arm, but I got quite good after a while playing with one arm. And even after I got the cast taken off, you know, for a while I wasn't used to using that arm because it was my left arm. Luckily, I'm right-handed, and I wasn't used to using it for a while. So I got really good at using just one arm. I got good at the scoop shot, just being able to do things with one arm, right? Eventually I would use both, yeah, but at the beginning it's like I wasn't used to using it, but I could still play, you know. That's augmenting, saying despite this, I still got it done. I can still do it, right? You can also appear competent, right? Well, this is more about making excuses and claiming competence. You can also appear competent by self-handicapping. This is when you self-handicap, you make things harder for yourself than they need to be. So this is when you withdraw effort, you lessen your effort, you create your own obstacles so that you have an excuse for failure. So in other words, you make it harder for yourself. So when you do fail, you have an excuse and you could still say that you're smart, you're competent, that it's not your fault. Males, right? Those with fragile self-esteem and those who wish to appear competent are more likely to self-handicap. Males are more likely to self-handicap in general more than women. And those who have fragile self-esteem, those who have lower self-esteem, or self-esteem that's not based in reality, okay, they're more likely to self-handicap. If there's someone who's full of themselves, who claims that they're this and that, and that they're really good, right? And then when it comes time to show it, right, they don't show it. They had some difficulty, but they did it to themselves. That's self-handicapping. There's people who do that, okay? Who still want to make you think that they're competent, and they keep making excuses or claiming obstacles. Sometimes they do it for themselves. You know, they claim they're busy doing all this stuff. They create all these obstacles so that they have very little time or can put forth very little effort. And then they say, well, I am smart. I can do this. I can write really well. I can do that. I can get an A in that class if I wanted to. I just don't have the time to study, right? I just didn't give myself enough time, or I didn't study. I didn't try. Well, you know what? You did it to yourself. That is self-handicapping. And we all self-handicap to some extent, some of us more than others. Another way to appear competent by making excuses and claiming obstacles, right? Not another way, but more about self-handicapping. There are many ways in which people self-handicap. When they take condition-impairing drugs. So let's say they get drunk, okay? You know, before the big game or something like that. Or they don't get a good night's sleep. And so there they are, you know, not at their best. They're kind of sluggish. Mentally, they're not there. Or, you know, it could also be the night before the exam. Rather than studying, they're there playing video games all night. Or, you know, they're not practicing, in other words. Or they're getting drunk, they're getting high, right? That's self-handicapping. Consuming alcohol, that's the same thing as taking drugs, right? Choosing unattainable goals. Sometimes you self-handicap by choosing goals that are unattainable, by basically giving yourself such a lofty goal that you know you're not gonna make it. And so you can claim you're still good even though you didn't make it. Like when you say, you know what, I am so good at basketball, I'm gonna make it to the NBA. I'm gonna play for the NBA. And then you don't make it because very few people do. You have like a 1 in a million chance or something like that. You can still claim, yeah, I'm good at basketball, just wasn't good enough for the NBA, right? And it's an unattainable goal. Or you can say, yeah, I'm gonna get into UCLA. You know, maybe it's unattainable for you. Maybe you're not doing well, and you don't. You get in somewhere else, and you could say, yeah, I'm smart. It just, just didn't get in there, but I'm smart, right? UCLA, USC is not an unattainable goal, okay? But it is for some people who are nowhere near where they should be in order to get into those places. Okay. But you can still continue believing that you're doing well, despite the fact that you didn't make it because you had a very lofty goal. Giving competitors a performance advantage, right? That's when you give people someone a head start for the race, saying, you know what, I'm so good, I'm going to beat you, even though I'm going to let you have a head start. I'm going to let you run for a minute, right? And then I'm going to start, and we'll see who finishes the mile first. That kind of stuff, right? Or, you know what, I'm going to let you, I'll let you start off with some more points, and then you can play me, and we'll see if you can beat me, right? Giving them an advantage, giving performance competitors an advantage, right? Then when you lose, right, you have an excuse. Well, I took it easy on you, or I gave you an advantage, so I'm still good. It's just that, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have won. That sort of thing. All right, here's another goal. The other goal of self-presentation is to convey status. To convey status, okay? The strategies for conveying status are to display artifacts of power. We'll talk about those. Conspicuous consumption. Okay, we'll talk about what that is. Basking in reflected glory, cutting off reflected failure, and using nonverbal dominance. That's how you can convey status. So let's talk about the first one. Displaying artifacts of power. So conveying status. So first of all, conveying status is when you want to show people that you are basically high class, you're high status, you're rich, you're powerful, that kind of stuff. It's not that you're telling people that you're good at something. That's competence, right? This is to show people I am somebody, right? I am rich, I'm powerful, I have high status, I'm important, that kind of stuff. And there are ways that you can seem important. You can seem like you're high status, ways that you can seem powerful, okay? One is displaying artifacts of status. In other words, you can use the things that make you look like a high status person. Doctors, CEOs, people who are successful lawyers, successful businessmen, they use items which indicate their position. They have waiting rooms, right? You can't just come in and see them. They have security there. They have a waiting room where there's an assistant, and then she or he will make it then an appointment for them to be able to see you. But they're usually kind of far removed from the public. They're in some protected space. And the more important they are, the more obstacles or the more spaces there are between the public and where they are. Okay. Think about how hard it would be for you, for instance, to be able to communicate, let's say, with the CEO of Google or Microsoft or Tesla or something like that. You probably have no chance of having having your voice heard. Okay. That shows that they're powerful. Okay. There's waiting rooms, there's appointments, there's all these things that you got to get through to get to them. Fancy desks, right? If you ever seen the desks of these people, they have these really fancy desks, right? Desks are expensive in general. I got this crappy desk that I'm using right here. It was probably a couple of $100. I found out it's not even real wood. Some of it is, but a lot of it is not. Fancy desks are expensive. And here's the thing, you guys probably haven't even seen fancy desks. You think that fancy desk you see at the department store is fancy because it's big and it's made out of wood. No, you should see the kind of fancy desk that the rich and powerful have. They have desks that cost as much as a car. Humongous desks, really fancy. It's just, it makes them look like there's some kind of god or something like that. I've seen this because I've been to some rich people's houses. And I've seen what's the kind of desks that some of these professionals have. Desks that basically, not like a 4, 5 foot, 6 foot desk. We're talking about a desk that's the size of a car. And it's so fancy and so beautiful. And it's just like, where do you even get that stuff? Right? Well, rich people know where to get that stuff. They shop at different places. The diplomas or the certificates or degrees up on the wall. That's another way you can make yourself seem like you're high status. Have your degree there, right? On the wall, your office, right? from Harvard or UCLA or whatever it is, and all these other things, right? The one for your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, for the one for medical school, all this stuff. And they have all these things up there, certificates for this and that, right? They're telling you, I am important. I am someone to be reckoned with. If you ever have a chance to go to my desk, go to my office on campus, and you see that, I have nothing up. I don't care about any of that stuff. All my stuff is stored away somewhere in my house, somewhere in a drawer somewhere. Not that I'm not proud of it, but I don't do any of that stuff. I don't have any fancy paintings there, or a bust of someone, or this fancy bookcase with all these books that I supposedly read and probably have not, right? People do all these things to make themselves seem important. Some of them really are, and some of them are faking it, by the way. Some people misappropriate these items to gain respect. Yes, some people just want to make themselves seem important by having the fancy desk and the fake diplomas up there, and the desks and all this stuff, and even the fancy car, which they don't even own. It's probably a lease or something like that. There's people like that who want to make you believe that they're important, that they're rich and powerful. And the reason they're doing that is because there's opportunities and access to certain things when you are rich, when you are powerful. Including people, by the way, who just throw themselves at you because they think you're rich or wealthy or whatever it is. And some people use this and they fake this to their advantage so they can take advantage of others, even steal from them. Pretend that you're some rich, super rich person and that you have basically this investment idea, and you basically then raise money for your business idea or your investment idea, and you raise all these millions of dollars and then disappear with the money. There's many people who have done that. Right? Will pretend that they are some rich person, or that they're a Rockefeller or something. There was a guy from France who pretended that he was a member of the Rockefeller family, a very rich family that has a lot to do with the oil industry. And back in the past, they used to be more rich and powerful in the past. But there's someone who pretended to be one of these people, and he wasn't. And he just used that to steal a bunch of money from a bunch of rich people. There are people who will pretend that they're doctors, that they're lawyers, who will say that they will help you, and they want an upfront fee, right? So that they can get started on your case or something like that, and then will disappear with your money. And then you'll go back to their office and you'll realize that there's nothing there, no one there, that they've already left. It was just a space they were renting temporarily. And as soon as they got their money, they disappeared. There's people like that. You have to be careful. By the way, you shouldn't think more highly of these people than normal people. Okay, you just shouldn't. It's not a good thing. Okay, sure, they are important and things like that, but you shouldn't like them more than normal people just because of that, just because they're rich, just because they're high status. But to some extent, we can't help it. But you should try not to get too too caught up in that sort of thing. It's actually a very shallow thing, and it's well, if you're not one of them, you can get really hurt, right? Or used, okay? Another way to convey status is conspicuous consumption, which is related to the artifacts, by the way. You can buy things that are fancy, basically. You can spend a lot of money. That's what conspicuous consumption is, right? People often display things that show their status through basically spending lavishly on houses. The rich people can't live in a regular house. No, they will buy these mansions, these humongous houses. And we're not talking about $1 million, $2 million. No way. That's a regular house nowadays, by the way. Okay. We're talking about 30, 40, $50 million houses. The richest people buy houses that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not like really homes. They're more like buildings. They're so big. It's like they live in a museum. They're so fancy. If you ever been to a nice resort, a nice vacation spot where this big fancy, it's called the resort, big fancy hotel with the lavish swimming pool and the nice room and all this stuff, big fancy place like that, right? Where you can stay there and spend, $300 a night to spend one night there. You go to a nice fancy resort, you go to Cancun or Hawaii or Florida or something like that. When you walk into that nice place, right? It's so fancy, so nice, right? When you're amazed at how beautiful it is. That is kind of what it's like to walk into a rich person's house. You walk in there and you're met with this humongous fancy space. Those are the kind of houses they live in. Okay. They have not just one car, but many automobiles, expensive cars that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of them millions. Expensive burial chambers. Also, when they die, they don't just want to be buried like everybody else. They need to have what's called a mausoleum, which is basically this, like almost like this little house that's usually made up of some fancy stone like marble, that has a door that's locked, a metal door, fancy door, right? And you go in there, and in there, somewhere in there will be their, their fancy, coffin encased in marble or whatever it is. They can also display their status, their power, by giving away and wasting money. Don't be fooled when people often give away money, especially the rich, it is to show off. Or corporations do this also. They give away lots of money and it makes the corporation look better, more successful. And they make more money if they give away money because it makes them look important. They do that for that reason. Rich people as well. They get praised, right? They get things named after themselves. When they donate $100 million to the university, they can have a whole building named after them. You donate enough money, they won't name things after you. They'll name auditoriums after you, buildings, labs, right? You can pay for the construction of something at a university and have things named after you. That's what the rich people do all the time. You should see how much money they give away so that they can get their name on a building or a lab or whatever it is. And the amounts that they give keep going up. I don't know what the record is anymore. The last I heard, somebody donated $200 million. I think the reason I know about this was because it was for USC, and they send me things and they tell me about all this money that they raise. They raise billions of dollars every year. And then they bother asking me for money when they raise billions of dollars from rich people. It's like, no, you don't need my money. And I don't have that much anyway. I have some, but I'm not going to give it to you, right? I'm not rich, okay? Yeah, so giving away money makes you look important, makes you look like you're high status. If you want to give away money and do it out of the goodness of your heart, don't let anybody know about it. But very few people do it that way. Wasting money is a way to show off as well, to show that you're high status, that you're powerful. How do these people waste money? Well, on their expensive houses, their expensive cars. Not just that, they have these lush gardens and swimming pools and all these attendants, all these people who clean their homes and take care of their gardens and even take care of their dogs. And they don't need to live in a house that big. They don't need to have all that stuff. A lot of it's just wasting money. It's showing off. But not only that, they spend so much money on electricity and gas because it takes a lot of money to heat and cool those humongous homes and to maintain them. It costs millions of dollars to maintain every year. And that's wasting money. And that's what a lot of these people do. That's how they can seem so important and so powerful. Look, money is no object for me. Okay? It's like, but literally they say, yeah, I can burn money if I wanted to. I can use my money and burn it in my fireplace to help keep me warm. That's how much money I have, right? Wasting money. They don't literally do that. But if you hear that, that's an expression, where they claim they have so much money. Being generally wasteful, even to the point of damaging the environment, right? They use up so much energy, so much water, so much gas, so much of everything for their homes and for their lifestyle that they're basically damaging the environment. They're creating more pollution, more waste than 1,000 other people. And they, don't really mind. They don't really care. And they might even be hypocritical about it, where they're out there in some commercial telling you to save the planet, telling you, the average person, to cut back and not to use so much electricity, not to use so much water, when they're living lavishly. They're not the ones who are going to cut back. The rich never do. The whole thing about saving water, right? We're asked to save water. Guess what? The rich and powerful never do. You think they're going to let their gardens dry up? Basically empty their swimming pools? Use less electricity? No way. That's how you can show that you're rich and powerful. A lot of this sounds bad and stuff, but that's the way they show you that they are someone that you need to be concerned with, someone that you need to watch out for, right? They're very powerful, wealthy people, right? They can sort of make your life uh, wonderful by giving you opportunities, or they can ruin your life if you piss them off. Another way to convey status, to make yourself seem important, convey power, is by basking in reflected glory and cutting off reflected failure. Basking in reflected glory is when you associate yourself with successful, high status others and events. So it's basically when you associate with someone who's rich and powerful to make yourself seem important. Rich people do this all the time with each other. Even though they're already rich and powerful, you'll see that basically the famous movie stars will hang out with other famous people, and the famous musicians will hang out with other famous musicians and other rich people, and they hang out around, they hang around each other, so to speak, and they reflect each other's glory. But there are also people who are not so rich, not so powerful, who want to hang out with those people so they can seem important. Sometimes it's their relatives, their friends, their entourage, so to speak. They're not the successful artist or the successful athlete, but they're hanging around these people because they know them, and they get a lot of the same benefits they do when they go out. They get attention, they get treated well, they get the people throwing themselves at them who want to date them and want to have sex with them. People who want opportunities from them. That's basking in reflected glory. Think of it this way. It's like, okay, so if you have a lot of glory, right, you're very successful. It's like you're the sun, right, and you shine brilliantly. Somebody who's close to you, your light is going to reflect on them and also illuminate them, so they will also be noticed, and they will also get to partake in some of that glory. Cutting off reflected failure is the opposite. That's when you distance yourself from people who are unsuccessful, people who are low status, people who reflect poorly on you. So you have a cousin, right, who's in prison that you don't even talk about, you don't mention, right? You pretend that you don't even know him. You don't go visit him, that kind of stuff. That's cutting off reflected failure. Or what happens, and this goes for just about any president, but especially the recent one we had, when there is some scandal, somebody was caught committing some kind of fraud or doing something really bad, the president will always distance themselves from that person and will say, I don't know that person. We're not really friends. Or I fired that person. I have nothing to do with their corruption. That is cutting off reflected failure. Often they are involved, but they want to cut them off so they don't get punished for the stuff that they're getting punished for. So they don't have their status taken away. And some people do it more than others. Like I said, even regular people do it. Regular people have, just normal people who are not rich and powerful have family members that you'd rather not be associated with, people you'd rather not talk to. Pretend that you don't have family members like that. Like I said, maybe someone who is homeless, maybe someone who's in prison or something like that, right? You know, those homeless people out there, probably all of them, most of them probably have family members. Where are they? Where are their family members? Why aren't they helping them? You know, most of the people in prison don't even get visitors. Why? That's cutting off reflected failure. When my cousin was locked up, even though he was locked up for something he shouldn't have done, and it was a really bad thing that a lot of people would look on as a very bad thing. He did something really bad. He didn't kill someone, okay? He didn't rape somebody, but he did something that in the eyes of the law was still a felony, a really bad thing that he lost his job for, and they threw him in jail and even deported him. This is the same cousin who lives in El Salvador. I still visited him. He was locked up in the prison right here in the Antelope Valley. It was harder for his other family members to see him, for his mom and stuff like that, because they live in LA. I live here, so like, maybe a couple of minutes away. I don't know if it's 10 or 15 or whatever it is, but I would go see him every Saturday. I was the only one who could see him all the time, that often. Got like 1 hour a week. Actually 1 hour, and then because of good behavior, he got 2 hours, right? But there are people who would rather say, I don't know that person, right? No, that person is not part of the family, right? because it makes you look bad. And if I tell you what this person did, it would make me look bad, right? But it didn't matter to me. He's still family. He's still my cousin. He did something bad, right? I'll tell you, he was, he was convicted of what they call statutory rape. He didn't really rape somebody. He slept with a minor, but that's considered rape because minors cannot give consent. He basically, I'm not saying that what he did was right. No, he did something very bad. Okay, he was actually a teacher and he had sex with one of his students. We know those things you hear about in the news, right? He wasn't on the news, but he still got caught. He got convicted, threw him in jail. What he did was awful. He shouldn't have done that. But he's still family, and I would still visit him. And I know that probably reflects poorly on me, maybe makes me look bad or something like that. But I know who my cousin is, and I know he's still a good guy, and he did a very bad thing, and it is bad, but he's still my cousin. He's still family. Now, if he would have killed somebody, that might be a different story, okay? I'm not saying that he did a good thing. Like I said, it reflects badly as me, as you can say, right? That I'm trying to explain myself here, right? And trying to defend myself, even though no one's really accusing me of anything. But he's still my family, and I would still go to see him, right? And I would still go to see him. I am going to go visit him in El Salvador. I plan to do that. I plan to do that, go visit him and then go see where my dad is buried. He's my cousin, right? He has children of his own over there now, and I'm going to go meet them. I see them on Zoom, but most people would just cut themselves off from those kind of people, right? Yeah, people who do bad things, you want nothing to do with them, right? That's how a lot of people are. Yeah, for me, family's family, right? I'm not saying that they shouldn't get punished or that I would forgive rape or murder or something like that. But I'm saying is, they do something wrong, they get punished, right? You're still family. I'm still going to talk to you. Other ways that you can convey status, nonverbal dominance, right? Basically, body language, right? Things that are not necessarily verbal, body language, right? Nonverbal behaviors like facial expressions, right? Have you noticed how the rich people look out at the world? The expression on their face, that they look so important, that they look kind of snobbish with their nose up in the air, right? That kind of stuff. They don't all look that way, but some of them do. But even so, right, their body language is different. They walk confidently and proudly, right? Their posture, their body orientation, their hand gestures, right? All of that changes. When you become rich, powerful, high status, the way you carry yourself changes. Your body language changes. A lot of that has to do with confidence. It changes. Here's more information about that. High status people are more likely to maintain eye contact when speaking. When they talk to you, they look at you directly in the eye. Okay? But when you are talking, they don't have to listen to you. They don't have to look at you. Okay? They're more likely to interrupt others. You are not allowed to interrupt them. If you do, it's a really bad thing and you can get punished or looked down upon, right? But they can interrupt you anytime because they're important and you're not. Okay? They place themselves in positions of prominence. In other words, they sit at the head of the table, right? We show that they're in charge or something like that, or the head of the desk, right, for the meeting, or in a lofty position at the theater or for the at the concert. They're right up front, that kind of stuff, or they have their little private area, or their luxury box at the basketball game, right? That kind of stuff. They're in positions of authority, positions of prominence. Okay. They touch others and enter others' personal space. They can get in your face and talk to you inches from your face and yell at you. You can't do that to them. They can touch you. You can't touch them. And if you touch them, it's seen as a big violation of some norm, some unwritten rule. There was some controversy some years ago about Michelle Obama, right? Barack Obama's wife, the former first lady, right? How she, met the queen and she touched the queen. I didn't see that. I only heard about it afterward. And it was like a big no-no. It's like, how dare you? I mean, the queen didn't respond that way. Other people did. Like, you don't just touch the queen. She's the Queen of England. That kind of stuff. It's that way for rich people. They can touch you. You can't touch them. that kind of stuff. Other things, other nonverbal dominance, or more about nonverbal dominance. Men display status and power more often than women. Men, this is more important to men, to show you that they're powerful, they're high status, that they're important. Even those that are poor and don't have much going for themselves want to show you that they are important, that they have status. It's important. They all want to show you that, even if they have none or not much at all. They have this drive to show you, yes, I'm someone, right? More so than women. Women aren't as full of themselves as much as men, okay? Part of this is socialization. The way that men and women are raised to be more assertive, more aggressive, to compete, right? Women are raised differently. They're raised to be nicer, more communicative, more nurturing, and they're also taught to go after men and to be with men who are important, men who have a good job, who have money, who can take care of you. So it goes both ways as far as learning. Men learn one thing, and women learn that they should like those men. Not the guy that doesn't have a job, not the guy that doesn't have any money, not the guy that has nothing going for him, right? That's not who you should want. Hey, the guy on the street, right? The homeless guy is not getting any action. He could be good looking. He's not getting anything. But the other guy who's rich and powerful, he can be hideous, and there'll be people throwing themselves at him. Biology matters as well. It has to do with testosterone, right? Animals that provide food, territory, attract more mates. Think about that as far as for males, right? Those that acquire more resources, more money, right? Bigger houses, more cars, more stuff, right? They attract more people. It's like in the animal kingdom, right? I can compete, right? I can provide more. You should be with me, right? That kind of stuff. Animals with higher testosterone are also more aggressive, have higher status, are more dominant. And it's the same way for men. As a matter of fact, as a man, when you get a promotion, when you get a job, a promotion, or you get more money, or something happens to you that makes you more successful, your testosterone actually rises. It goes both ways. Testosterone rises in response to an achieved dominance or status, and it also affects your ability to have that, or your desire to have that status. And yes, men have more testosterone, are more competitive, more assertive than women. Part of it is biology, part of it is socialization. So men want more status, they want more dominance than women do. They're more power hungry, put it to you that way. That is where we'll stop. We're done with this chapter.